So what I'm immediately thinking about then as a next step is, where do I get started? Because if I'm a marketer listening to this, or a partner leader, or maybe I'm in an early stage startup and I do both those things, I know that I have some businesses that I've already engaged with. Let's assume that there's like a bit of a foundation in that sense. What's the best early go-to-market then, the best early strategy that you can think of or that you've seen for someone to take advantage of and really lean into in order to get in front of and start that mechanism of Nearbound, of partner-led marketing, and being more directive in that sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it does start with, where do you make those connections? Where do you get into the market? And what I say is identify who your evangelists are. And I think those evangelists, again, kind of in that picture of the people who are closer to your prospect than you are as the brand. The good news is some of those are already in your network. I think some of them are also already inside your company, but they are in a way closer to the prospect than your brand is. And now some you might not have connections with. So let's talk about those three of those: the internal, the external, you already have relationships, and then the external that you don't. I think internal, if anyone's read Founder Brand by Dave Gerhardt, they know where I'm going to go here, right? Your founder, especially if you're an early stage startup, has an opportunity to build trust and engage in and live in the market in a different way than anyone else, right? And we know that, those of us who are on LinkedIn, we know that individually, Barrett, you and I might have far fewer followers on LinkedIn, not even as founders, but just as individuals who are leading within SaaS companies. We have far fewer followers than HubSpot and Teamwork on the company pages on LinkedIn, respectively. But we can put out posts that reach far more because of the algorithm and because of human behavior and this idea of trust that we're talking about. So I think you start internally with folks like your founders, your subject matter experts, your folks who are hands-on with customers. So your CS people, your professional services folks, because one, if you are able to create content and bring them into your marketing, not only does it humanize it because it's going out through a person, there's a layer of trust because it's coming from someone who either has domain and industry experience like the founder, or someone who's working day to day with your audience's peers, like those ProServe folks and folks like that. So if you take that one layer out, you want to get outside of your company walls. It's your agency or solution partners, right? That you already have relationships with, that have relationships that you don't have yet. It's your integration partners. It might be content creators and influencers because they have a level of trust because they're not creating content to try and convert people. They're creating content that is authentic, that's genuine. Not that content can't be genuine and lead to conversions. I'm a believer in content can be powerful and still be authentic in that way. But we both know that content creators are changing the game in both B2C and B2B. And so then looking at those, who of those external potential evangelists in a Nearbound marketing motion can you activate internally, externally, and then some of those that you might not have relationships with. The other thing is, a lot of SaaS companies have advisors who have domain expertise, right? Can you activate them? Can you bring them into your marketing to create content with them and distribute it with them as well to get closer to the buyer? And so that might be one of those internal/external potential evangelists in a Nearbound motion.
That's interesting, because then you're talking about using the true network effect. So you're thinking about it in multiple dimensions. I think that's probably my core takeaway whenever we have conversations about this. You and I have chatted to that extent before. And I think ultimately, when you discuss and describe it as more than just a single dimension. So it's not just outbound emails. It's not just, content to produce an inbound magnet, effect, but more specifically, it's this all encompassing go to market where you're engaging every perhaps corner, if you will, of the internet that a buyer may or may not live in or spend time in as well. Are you seeing then through your own experience, observing the market or your own network itself, that people are subsequently more maybe receptive is the right term. Like I kind of wonder if that's the next frontier as a part of this, that we've got, you described it, like this trust value that we're now all seeking out that inherently provides an opportunity for brands to cut through the noise. And it is noisy. I mean, arguably, like we're being distracted. I'm not going to get the data right. There was some stat I read recently talked about it used to be at the advent of television, like 1,000 ads a month. And now it's like 15,000 ads a day in some capacity if you live in a major metro. So like you're distracted that much. How do you think then this network that we're describing here, this Nearbound effort drives a different type of trust? Like what about it provides that more foundational, higher ROI, customer-centric value that obviously brands are seeking out?
Mm-hmm. I think it comes down to an old saying that kind of older sales guys like you and I, or at least experienced.
I'm okay with that. You can call me an old sales guy, by the way. I'm good with that.
Well, I'm getting to the point, I still get comments of, wait, how old are you? How old are your kids? You've got that baby face because I can't grow the facial hair.
There you go.
But the old saying goes, people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And we've talked about that. We kind of, even as marketers, we mention that when we want to create a brand that people trust, but we skip over that the middle word in that sentence. People buy from people, right? And I think that is the point here. Whether it's integration partners, whether it's agency partners, content creators, or internal employees or executives, the common theme here is these evangelists, as I call them, that you want to activate. They're all people. Yes, you want to go to other complementary brands, but then it is, well, who individually can I work with, right? So case in point, one of the things I did at Teamwork, we decided we've made a pivot to focus specifically on agencies and folks doing client service work rather than try to be the project management platform for everyone. Well, when I joined the team and we kicked off a webinar series and we're trying to create content for agencies, much like, a lot of folks who live in the HubSpot Solution Partner Network, I thought, who do they know? Who do they trust? And who can add value? And I thought of Pete Caputa, right? I didn't necessarily think Databox has a lot of agency customers. Let me go talk to them. Or HubSpot has a lot of agency customers. Let me try and, engage the full marketing engine of both those companies. But I started making individual connections with folks like that, individually with Pete. And I reached out to him and tried to make it as easy as possible and said, hey, I see you're talking about this. You already laid out this 5-part framework in a LinkedIn post. How about that becomes the fodder for our webinar? And so 1, it's about the people. 2, it's about making it easy for those evangelists. And it's about identifying the folks that already have the trust, because it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. LinkedIn is probably, the social media platform for most B2B brands and folks listening to this. And again, there's a reason that the individual personal profiles get more reach. And when people start talking about specific brands, it's usually, I see this name everywhere. Like 2 of the people have moved on from Gong now, but I think of Gong and it's like, oh, Devin Reed, Chris Orlob, Sarah Brazier, right? And those stick in my mind as much as the brand that I've come to know and trust there.
I think it's the human part of it. It's the business to human to business modification that's taking place within go-to-market. And in particular with marketing, because it used to be simple to do targeted ads or do your email copy or whatever it was to go and engage the buyers that you want to work with. But I think you're right. I mean, ultimately, it's about foundational trust, not just upfront magnetic value like we were talking about earlier. And I think inherently in that framework, you have to modify the way that you talk to your buyer. It's almost like a different language, because your buyer is no longer 57 people across an entire business that like read one email and go, sure, that sounds good. It's one person. And that person has a network, and that person has feelings and emotions and history and everything else. And all of that bodes well for a more targeted, more intentional approach. That's great.
And I think the one thing I'll call out there that you just kind of touched on that maybe isn't new, but more marketing teams are starting to realize this. We think that in B2B, everybody says B2B is boring. B2B marketing needs to be more human, those sorts of things. But I think one of the things we don't realize is how buying actually happens. I think B2B buying is even more relational and even more emotional at times. If I buy something that I say, well, this was a mistake from Amazon, guess what? Return, QR code, UPS store, and I'm off. If I make a decision that I'm the primary decision maker on hiring this agency, bringing on this new partner management platform, bringing on this new CRM, guess what? My livelihood could be on the line. There's a lot of emotion in that decision, because if you get it wrong, it has bigger consequences. And so that is why people are no longer just going to Google and saying, how can I solve this problem? What platform will help me with this, right? But instead, they're going on Slack, they're going to text, they're going to their LinkedIn DMs, and they're asking themselves, who do I trust to give me an answer about solving this problem? And I think that's the big shift. Instead of how do I answer this problem? People are asking, who do I trust? Because they know if they ask how, they're going to get bombarded with information and they don't know what of it to trust. If they start with who, then they're starting with trust. And so the information that comes, they trust it and then they're able to act on it. So I think marketing teams can make that same shift. Instead of saying, how do we reach our target market? What channel, those sorts of things. We say, who does our target market trust and how can we work with them to attract them together?
What a killer way to end this episode. To start with who is to start with trust. That's like the quote of the day. That's brilliant. And I think your last comment there around the fact that B2B is emotional. We are humans, we are people, but it has material impact is important too. This has been honestly fun and awesome. I've learned a bunch. Logan, if folks want to get in touch with you on the internet, where do they find you? How do they reach out?
Two easy places. One, LinkedIn. If you couldn't tell from my earlier comments, the place I'm most active, you can find me there. Logan Lyles, Lyles. It's the way to spell my last name. And two, if you're listening to this, you probably like podcasts. You probably like hearing about partnerships and marketing. I host a weekly show every Friday called Marketing Together, where we're talking about this concept of who, not how, marketing together, not marketing alone. And what does this new evolution of what we're calling Nearbound marketing actually look like? And how are people experimenting with it and seeing success?
Brilliant. I love it. You heard it here, folks. You heard it here first and only. Logan, you're incredible. This has been fun, man. Thank you so much. Reminder to like, subscribe, leave a comment. And for all of you checking out Outcomes, we appreciate you. Thank you for your support. And we're excited for the next episode. Take care, my friend. Be well.